6 years ago, these women were strangers to one another. Today, they have an incredible bond connected through unimaginable tragedy.
Penny, if I can start with you, what was it about flying that Ross loved so much?
He loved being up in the sky. He was born to fly.
Penny's husband Ross died at the age of 47.
There he is, bucketing down. Hello there, kids.
Howdy day, kids, look. And he became the youngest captain for Qantas. I think he was about 27. So it was just his passion, it was in his blood.
Jess's husband Brian was just 31.
We met designing and building single-seating race cars. He used to drive me home and we used to talk over naturally aspirated versus turbocharged, and he'd always miss his turn, and it was really great. It was a very special time.
And Laura's husband Stuart was 34.
Stuart and I met at high school and we started dating when I was 15, and I think my first thought of him was he had a terrible haircut. And I don't know what he was thinking, but something.
All three women lost their partners to unexplained cardiac death, one of the biggest killers of Australians under 50. More than 2,000 young, healthy people will die from UCD this year. And now Penny, Jess and Laura are campaigning so others don't suffer as they have.
There was no warning. I was getting ready for bed and Ross just said, I'm going to shoot off a couple of work emails. And he comes into the bedroom and he looks at me and he said, I don't feel well. And it was like he had this massive electric shock and he was thrown onto the bed and I screamed. My kids heard me screaming and they ran in and I called 000 and started doing compressions. He had absolutely no pulse. He had no rhythm when they were defibbing him. When I saw that line was flat and there was no rhythm, I knew he was gone, and my soul was ripped in two.
After returning from Ireland with their 3-month-old girl, Jess noticed Brian didn't look well, but doctors had given him the all clear.
This is the last photo of Brian. It was taken on the Sunday night, and he went to bed on the Monday night and never woke up. That final photo was just that smile that was very, very much so Brian, because Brian always smiled. And then I was feeding Aves throughout the night. As I got out of the bed, Brian reached out, and so I grabbed his hand and he said, I love you. And that was normal, that was very much so Brian. He was very caring and very affectionate. So I gave him a kiss on his forehead and I said, I love you too. And at this stage I had Aves in my arms, and so I left the room. That was the last I got to speak to Brian.
Tragically, Stuart's last moments were in the shed of their new home, where Laura found him unresponsive.
I just saw him laying there face down. I don't know where I got the strength from, but I pulled him out from where he was laying and rolled him over, and I yelled to the neighbour to call the ambulance, and she did. And I just remember screaming when I first saw him. I knew he was... Part of me still thought he would be okay, but I just couldn't stop screaming. Even now, the screams wake me up when I'm sleeping. We did CPR until the ambulance arrived. It was probably about 20 minutes or so. And I just remember the paramedic coming to me and telling me he's deceased.
Suddenly, these three women were widowed and facing a new reality as a single mum. Jess and Brian's little girl, Avie, was only 3 months old when he passed away. They now have a little boy, Jack, who was conceived through IVF.
It meant a great deal for me to be able to have Jack, a sibling for Avie, so that she's not in this world on her own. And when something like this happens, when someone young, fit and healthy is gone in a moment, it makes you very aware of how vulnerable you are and very aware that I could disappear. And I really didn't want Avie to be on her own.
For Penny, it was her 3 children, Emma, Lockie and Becca, that got her through.
If it wasn't for my babies and that maternal instinct to protect them, I just wanted to curl up in a ball with Ross. So I think having our children, beautiful Dulcie, she's such a miracle, that's what kept me going, because they needed me. They were still young.
I was 3 weeks pregnant when Stuart died. And sadly, he never knew he was going to be a dad. I think it's one of the hardest things, because I know how much he wanted to be a dad and how much he would have loved her. And she's so cheeky. She's got his cheekiness. She definitely takes after Stuart. She has his smile and has his eyes.
Dulcie Violet is almost 16 months old now, and each day she is a reminder that Stuart is with them.
What would he have been like as a father?
He would have been the best dad.
3, 2, 1.
Before they died, Ross, Stuart and Brian were all otherwise fit and healthy. Sudden cardiac arrest happens when the electrical activity in the heart stops. It usually causes death within 10 minutes.
Unfortunately, only about 1 in 10 people survive a cardiac arrest.
And in 20% of cases, there is no known cause.
The unexplained group, unexplained cardiac death or SADS, is the most troublesome group because we can't even work out why they've died. It's an incredibly difficult thing for families to live with.
Right now, there's little funding for research into why young Australians suddenly die. That's why Dr. Andre has partnered with End UCD, a foundation that was set up by Penny and her family.
So that we can develop strategies to prevent people dying suddenly in the future.
Because one of the few known risk factors is that it could be hereditary.
Okay.
So for me, that's my biggest fear, and that's probably one of my biggest motivators for doing this, is that the science is not there and it needs to be there. There's so much that's unknown that needs to be known.
But we need more help so we can end this heartache, because we don't want anyone to go through the pain and trauma that our families have been through.
And I noticed that all of you are wearing a particular item of jewellery.
It's her husband's wedding bands. I don't know why, but it helps me feel more connected to Brian.
And it's particularly if I'm having an emotional day, I'll put it on. But it's like they're here with us.
Yeah, I wear this daily around my neck. It's actually a good distraction for Dulcie.
Well, ladies, I just have to say thank you so much for being so open and honest. And for all the wonderful work that you're doing. It's just so amazing. I'm so sorry that this happened to you.
Thank you for sharing, giving us the opportunity to share our story and hopefully create the awareness and the help that we need to end the heartache.
Thank you, guys. Let's have a hug. Hug it out.
Oh, thank God for waterproof the scar.
Thank you.
So tragic, very, very tragic. To lose the love of your life, it's your worst nightmare, but to not understand why would just compound it.
Yeah. And they were fit, healthy men, and those factors aren't a protection for those under 50. You can be fit and healthy and it will still strike you down.
The numbers are incredible. 9 out of 10 people do not survive this, which is shocking in itself. But they are collecting samples, DNA samples, evidence from victims as well as the survivors, the family that they bind, to start to try and build more of a picture of some of the factors they want ultimately to be able to have a screening test, which would obviously be helpful.